In this video, we're talking rubrics, what they are, why you'd use them, and how to use them in Canvas. So what are rubrics? They're basically evaluation instruments that define criteria and the associated performance levels. Simply put, they state what students should be able to do and provide rating scales for how well they're doing it. So let's look at an example, and there are lots of places you can go to find discipline-specific sample rubrics, but I'm gonna write a fun rubric for my example with content we probably all can relate to, so I'm gonna use pound cake, because who doesn't love pound cake? So I'll start by thinking about the criteria. This is the what. What should my students, or in this case my bakers, be able to do? This is important because it defines what really matters about the work they're doing, and the criteria should be tied to the learning objectives. In other words, if I want students to be able to bake a pound cake, it doesn't really matter what font they're using on the little label they create for the finished product. If I had a learning objective, however, that addressed marketing their pound cake, I might look at criteria like that. But this assignment is measuring their ability to bake a pound cake. So I'm going to set my criteria as taste, texture, and appearance. Next, I'm going to write a description for each performance level for each criterion. And this is where I'm thinking about, what does an exemplar submission look like? The ideal pound cake is rich, buttery, and lightly sweet. It's moist, sturdy, dense, finely textured. It's evenly shaped and golden brown. And this is really how I would define mastery. And you can see this is me telling my students in very descriptive terms what they're aiming for. So on my next level, this is kind of like the student skills in this area are developing, but they're not quite there yet. And then my last level is they either just haven't done it or they've just missed the mark completely. And I can have more levels here. Just for simplicity, I'm using 3. Now, before we go into the how, let's take a moment to talk about why. First, they make grading fair and objective. When you define the criteria and describe those performance levels, you're tied to those. So the score is based on how the evidence in the submission compares to the description of the different performance levels. In other words, it reduces bias in grading. So when you first start using rubrics, you might experience some discomfort when the grade that you want to give a particular student doesn't align with the grade they've earned. And this is the good kind of discomfort, the kind that indicates we're taking concrete steps to address our biases. Next, they provide students with information that can help them be successful on the assignment. This is especially important in asynchronous online classes where students typically only have written instructions and might not get the benefit of hearing you verbally go over and describe the expectations of that assignment like you do in the classroom. Next, taking the time to define our learning objective and describe mastery of that objective can also help improve our instruction. As we sit and really think through what the different performance levels look like, it can help us say, you know what, this is really important, but I don't really devote much time to it. So with my example, which as I said, we probably all have experience with pound cake and we can relate to that, you might be having your own opinion about what makes the exemplar pound cake. Like, oh no, it needs to be more than slightly sweet. And so, like I said, this is just a fun example, but if you think about with your expertise in your discipline, how valuable this kind of information will be to your students to have you clearly and descriptively define what mastery looks like for the different skills they need and that they're obtaining in your class. Rubrics really are gold in terms of their instructional value. And really, if I were teaching a baking class, I might start here by showing my rubric when I start my pound cake unit, the definition of what we're trying to achieve in this unit, so that students are armed with this knowledge as they do the reading and listen to my lectures and watch my videos and do the practice activities. And so then also, once we start using the rubrics, they can then provide us with actionable data as we're grading. We can look at them and say, hey, here's where students are struggling, and here's an improvement I can make to my course to help students achieve the learning goals. And this does take some upfront work, of course, when you're developing your rubrics, but the beauty is that it will save you time in the long run as it makes grading faster and more efficient. And I'll show you what that looks like in Canvas in a moment. And you'll see it's just a few clicks, and it provides the scored rubric to the student as feedback. So they're getting that descriptive feedback and they know how they earned their grade. And I think this is nuanced, but it's important that it kind of changes the conversation from you giving the grade to how students earn their grade. And again, that objectivity and that detailed information that can help students understand their grade and make those questions and conversations with students about their grades a little easier and maybe even fewer and further between. Okay, so let's hop back into Canvas, and before I show you how to set this up, let's just quickly look at how I use it for grading, that efficiency piece. So obviously this is a pound cake assignment. Student couldn't submit their pound cake online via Canvas, so I have this set up as a no submission assignment. But for your online assignments in your online courses, when you go into SpeedGrader, of course, you will see the students' work here. I just want to quickly show you what happens when I attach a rubric to an assignment in Canvas, how I can use that rubric for grading. So it adds this View Rubric button here, and I can click that to access my rubric. I can just adjust this a little bit so I can see the whole thing. And what I can do now is use this rubric to score. So I'm evaluating the student's work, I'm reading it, I'm looking at it, and I'm clicking through the rubric. They've done this, they need a little work here, and they've done this, and save, and that's it. So now my assignment is scored for this student, and the student will receive this descriptive feedback. Of course, I can also add a comment and submit it. And now let's hop into student view and see what it looks like from the student's perspective. So I'm going into Canvas as test student. I see I have a new grade, and I can come into the grade area to access this rubric and see exactly how I earned my grade. Now we are going to go through this step by step in Canvas, and the first step really is to develop your rubric outside of Canvas with a program that you're comfortable with, like Word or Excel or even PowerPoint, as I've done here, so that you can kind of play with your rubric, especially those point values. Canvas isn't really the place to play. It's going to get very confusing and frustrating, whereas if you have your rubric set, you do your playing with the different point values before you set it up in Canvas, you're going to have a much better experience. Okay, so I'm back in Canvas and I'm going to set this up. You can see I have a brand new assignment started, but there's actually nowhere in the assignment settings where I can tell Canvas that I want to use a rubric to grade for this assignment. So what I'm going to do is create my assignment and save it, and then I'll be given the option to attach a rubric to it. So I'm going to click Add Rubric, and this is what pops up. This is where I can set my rubric up in Canvas. And the first thing I'm going to do is just give it a name, and I'm just going to name it the name of the assignment. And Canvas does keep all your rubrics. You can access your rubrics from Rubrics in the course navigation, so you can reuse these rubrics on different assignments once you set them up. And then I get this section here where it's already kind of started me with one criterion for my rubric, and as you recall, I need 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is edit this first generic one that it put here to be my first one, which was taste. And I'm going to add the description. You don't have to add a description here if it's self-explanatory, but Canvas does give you that option. Then I'm going to add another one. And my last one. Okay, so I have my criteria set. Now I'm going to start working on my performance levels. So you can see Canvas gives me 2 to start. It calls it full marks and no marks, defaults to 5 points and 0 points. My assignment is worth 100 points. I'm going to make my rubric add up to 100 points, and I'll start here in the full marks category, which I actually refer to as mastery. And you can see when I go into edit it, I'm given that option to change the title of the rating. And my taste criterion is worth 50 points toward the 100 points in the assignment, which indicates to students that's the most important thing that I'm looking for, that the pound cake tastes good. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my description and update. And I'm going to go through and do the same thing for texture and appearance. And so now it totals 100 points, and I have my mastery performance level set. Now what I need to do, since there's only one more column, but I need two more, I'm just going to click this add button to give it another level. And I'm going to fill this out based on the rubric I already wrote. And now I'm going to add my final performance level for each of my criteria. And I just double check to make sure that my math works out. And now I'm going to look at these options down at the bottom. This is important because if you don't check this checkbox, use this rubric for assignment grading, you're not going to have the ability to click through the rubric in SpeedGrader to give the student their score and provide them with this descriptive feedback. So once I do that, I can go ahead and click Create Rubric. And it's set. I hope you found this useful, and please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more helpful videos like this.